Hey, it's Rob from Wheelworks Bike Shops. We're just going to go through how to fit handlebar tape on a road or a gravel bike. So, number one tip, have your insulating tape ready, your electrical tape ready, because I usually forget that, and then I get to the end of the bar tape and realize I haven't got it handy, and you can't let it go. Anyway, you'll see what I mean when we get further along. So we start off with rolling back the hoods like that, and then there's different ways, different directions. People have different ways of doing bar tape, but this is the way that I always do it. This bar tape is Trek's new EcoTac bar tape, so it's got a gel inside. It's nice and grippy, and it's quite soft. So one of the things that I think is important particularly on gravel bikes or cyclocross bikes, is the bar tape should be quite soft, because your hands are going to take a bit of a pounding when you're off road. So soft bar tape is a nice thing to have. And we'll just pull off the backing tape, get it started. And I start on the inside with the sticky tape right to the very edge, even a little bit past it, and do one wrap, and I'm wrapping under and over. The first wrap has quite a big overlap, just so that we have enough material to push into the end with the bar end plug. And then so the overlap it's about a third of the tape is how much I overlap it by. You'll see once we do a couple rows. And you want to try and get that overlap consistent, and you want the tape to be tight. You want tension on it all the time. So every time you take your hand off the tape, you want to hold it in place to keep it under tension so that it doesn't come loose. If it comes loose and the bar tape isn't tight when you're riding, it'll start to unfurl, and it'll be a pile of shite. As you get to the bend in the bar, you're going to have to change the angle that you're wrapping at. So it's going to get a little bit tighter at the top here, so that the gap isn't too big at the bottom. There is a little extra piece of bar tape that comes with handlebar tape, and that's usually for fitting here, so that you don't end up with any gaps. But I prefer to wrap without that, and I think you can, if you're neat and tidy with what you're doing, it's possible to wrap and not have any gaps at the end. So I'm hoping that I get to the end and don't have any gaps. Otherwise, I'm just going to look like a dope. So again, I'm keeping that under tension as I'm switching hands. The gap is getting smaller here as we're coming through the bend. And if you come around this side, you can see that because the bar tape isn't completely soft and stretchy, you can get gaps like that. So it's important to keep it under tension to try and not have big lumps anywhere. So you want to pull it tight, keep those lumps or gaps to a minimum. When you get to the junction with the hood, it's a figure of 8. So I go up as normal, and then I switch up, back down, inside, and back up from there. And with this bar now, you've got your hydraulic hose going in here, which is going to change the diameter of the bar in places. You've also got a double corner and different width bars, so you need to keep your tension tight and try and keep your gaps even as you're coming around. I would typically wrap it much closer at the top here and it gives you a bit more cushioning where your hands are going to be. It just makes it a little bit more comfortable. It's also less likely to pull loose where you're going to have the most friction and tension on the bar tape, because that's where you're holding it a lot. This bar has a groove here, which is typically where we'll stop with the bar tape. I'll bring it around. Now, the way that I finish bar tape is, so you can see that the leading edge is now matching nice and neatly with that ridge, and I'm going to follow that around, and it's going to overlap underneath with the ridge, and that's where I'm going to start to cut. So the cut is going to go this way to follow the line of the ridge. So I'm after over wrapping it there, going too far, just so that I've got, I'm going to start cutting from about here, and hopefully I've gotten that angle about right. There's a little bit of float with this because you're going to have insulating tape which will cover up a certain amount of, and I cut a long shallow angle. Cut that a little bit wide. I'm just going to go back a tiny bit more and trim a bit off it. And again, you're always better have to trim a bit more off it because you can't undo a cut once it's done. And now that cut line is nicely in line with the handlebar, and the gaps are reasonably even along here. And we're going to finish that off with the electrical tape. I always use electrical tape first, and I pull it quite tight, and it just means that the dress tape, the finishing tape that you get with a lot of handlebars or handlebar tape isn't always that tacky, and if it doesn't stick perfectly, your handlebar tape's going to unravel and come loose. Electrical tape will obviously just tear, but I like to have a nice neat line because I'm a bit OCD sometimes. So that's that, and then you've got, most handlebar tapes will come with a soft stretchy dress tape, just a little finishing tape, and we'll put that on next. This one actually is quite sticky, so, but either way, it's slightly wider than the insulating tape, and it's a nice matte satin finish on this one. You want to keep it under tension, but not too much, because if you overstretch it, you'll end up with creases and wrinkles. That's your finishing tape, and then your bar end plug is the last piece to go in. And again, I'd be a little bit OCD, so I'd always make sure that the logo is the correct way up if there's one on it. And you sort of bunch the tape into the center and catch it with the end of the plug. And if you've done it right, you should have cut it all and pushed it in, and that pushes in tight. So that's not exactly perfect, and it's not exactly straight. I'm going to take that out and do it again. This is where we actually need an editor who's going to cut that bit out so that I get it right first time. But we're probably not going to do that. So, okay, so we'll try that again. you want to bunch it all up and then catch it, lining up the plug properly this time. I think that's better. And then push it all the way in, and that's it. So it's a nice tight fit down there. Then your hood should roll back, and if you've got the figure of 8 right, you shouldn't have any gaps here or on the inside. So we didn't need to use that little piece of tape. So that's it. That's how to wrap a handlebar tape.